Guys, welcome to Techno Trendz channel. Today we are going to learn how to connect to the database using JSP. So the JSP and database connectivity is more important because all the web applications which are going to create by using JSP are need to connect with the database, and they need to have the database connectivity compulsory. Okay, for that purpose we are going to learn how to connect to the database using JSP, and the database we are going to use here is MySQL database, and in the MySQL database we are going to create a database called Techno Trendz, and in the Techno Trendz database we are going to create a table called EMP employee table, and that employee table fields are ID, username and address. Let us move on to the MySQL database first, and we are going to create the database and we are going to create the table, and we will insert some data for the ID, username and password to retrieve the data from the JSP. Okay, let us move on to the MySQL database command prompt. Okay, alright, this is the MySQL database command prompt. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to create the database Techno Trendz. Okay, right, the query creator use. Okay, so show databases, right? Okay, so it's very nice to see my database called Techno Trendz here. Very good. And now what I'm going to do is use database name Techno Trendz. Okay, so I am using my database, right? So the tables, I haven't created any tables, so empty set it will return. Okay, now create table name EMP with ID EID varchar of 10 comma ename varchar of 50 comma address varchar of 50, right? So right, my table was created. Now show table. Alright, EMP is table, and the description of my table is, that means what are the fields I have and what are the type they are, and all those things will be displayed with the help of DSC EMP. And now I am going to insert into my table EMP and ID comma EID comma ename comma ADDR, right? Values are 1, so as it is varchar. Okay, so Techno Trendz comma Warangal. Right, sorry, I have forgotten to have the address. ADDR, not ADDR, it is address. And now my query was inserted, right? One row affected. So let me check what are the values I have entered here. Select star from EMP, right? Okay, so one Techno Trendz and Warangal, and I'm going to insert one more field, Chu, right? And the name of the employee is YouTube, and address is Hyderabad. Right, so query okay and inserted. Select star from EMP. I have two employee details in my table. One is Techno Trendz and one is YouTube. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to retrieve this value from my JSP page. For that purpose I'm going to create a application first, web application first, and in that I'm going to create a HTML page, and I'm going to create the JSP page, and I'm going to call my database from the JSP page. Okay, so Right, so create a HTML form to read ID from the user, and then forward it to the JSP and check whether the ID is in the database or not. If it is, the ID is in the database, then we will display the data of the user. Otherwise we will display invalid ID message to the user, right? So let us move on to the NetBeans to create the project and to create the HTML page and Java server pages, and we will create the web application first, right? Okay, so to create a new web application, click on file menu. Okay, go to click on new project. Okay, in the new project, Java web and web application. Next, okay, here you need to give the file name JSP JDBC, right? JDBC JSP, right? Okay, and say next. Select the server, Apache Tomcat 8.0.27.0, right, and say finish. Creating new project for me, and it will create a index.html file in the project. Okay, alright, index.html file was created, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change my title here, JDBC using JSP, right? And in the body I'm going to create a form, right? The form action is Login JSP, and which is going to use the method post, and this is my form. And next I'm going to have a text box here, right? Text input. Okay, the name of the text input is EID, okay, and which is of text type, and okay, right? And I'm not going to have the value here, I'm going to have the enter your employee ID, right? So this is my input type is equal to text, and next I'm going to have a button, okay, which is of type submit, and the label I'm going to have is login, right? Say okay. Now it is ready. Let me check what happening here, right? So I'm going to make it center first, right? I'm going to make it center, okay, and done. Let me check whether it is running. So run the application. So JDBC JSP started running, and the Tomcat is going to be started first, and then it will start the execution. Okay, right. Right, so enter your employee ID and say login. Okay, right. So my problem is I don't have any whatever I want to have here is I want to have here BR, right? Okay, so let me check. Yes, perfect. Now I need to create the login JSP.jsp file here, right? So for that purpose, right click on my project, say new JSP. The name of my JSP is Login JSP, right? And it is going to create my JSP file. Okay, how? Right, very nice. Now title is JSP page, and body I'm going to remove the h1. Okay, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to first read in my EID entered in the HTML page into my JSP. Okay, so for that purpose I need to include the JSP element. Okay, so JSP element I am taking in between the JSP scriptlets. Okay, so string id is equal to request dot get parameter of EID. Right, string id is equal to request dot get parameter of EID. Let me check whether EID has been created requested from the login page or not. Okay, so for that purpose I am going to check this ID to be printed into my HTML page. Okay, let me check whether right it is perfect. So EID is 1 and I'll say login, and I got it here. Look here, I got here EID 1. Okay, so my JSP has got the EID successfully. So it is just for the checking purpose. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this ID to select start from the table. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I wanted to connect it with the database. So to connect to my database, to connect my JSP page to the database, I need to have the JDBC driver to be added to my application. Okay, so I need to add the database driver to my application using libraries. Okay, so for that purpose, to add the libraries to your project, you need to right click on your project, go to properties. Okay, so in the properties you are going to see libraries here, right? So libraries. Okay, so in the libraries you are going to select add library, and which will give the libraries, available libraries list here, and in which you need to select the click on MySQL JDBC driver and say add library, and MySQL JDBC driver will be added to your library, and say OK, and it is saving your project data, which will add the library to your application. Right, so here I'm going to see MySQL JDBC driver, MySQL connector Java -5.1.23 bin.jar. It was added to my library automatically. Right, okay, now I want to import the page import java.sql.star to your application. Right, now what I need to do, I need to write the JDBC commands. Okay, so JDBC commands will be start with there are 5 steps to connect with the database using Java application. The first step is you need to mention to which database driver, what is the database driver you are using. For that purpose you need to use a class called a class data for name of com.mysql.jdbc.driver. right, next driver manager dot get connection with jdbc colon MySQL colon slash slash local host colon 3306 slash the database name I want to connect with Techno Trendz, right, comma the username for my database is root and the username for my database is password for my database is empty, right? So I got connection now, okay, and then I need to create the statement first, okay. So for that purpose, statement stmg is equal to the connection object. The driver manager dot get connection will create the connection object, okay. So connection con is equal to driver manager dot get connection, and that con object will be used to create the statement, right? And now I need to create the SQL query, right? So string query is equal to select star from emp where eid is equal to id I have read from the user, and that's it, okay. So I take select star from emp where eid is equal to id, and now I need to execute that query, and this query will be written with a result set. So result set rs is equal to stmg dot execute query of SQL query, and the query is string query, right? And now if rs dot next, if there is any element, then there is any row in my result set, if eid is equal to 1, it will return one row into the result set. If eid is equal to 3, there is no database entry, table entry into eid with into table emp with eid 3, so it will return null. So if rs dot next is going to return me with some row, then it will take the values into the some strings and it will display onto the screen. Otherwise it will return an an error message to the user. So I am going to take a string eid is equal to, right, eid is equal to rs dot get string of column index 1, right, string ename is equal to rs dot get string of column index 2, and e string iddr is equal to rs dot get string of column index 3, or I can have the column label address, like this also I can read in, okay. So what exactly I'm going to do here is I'm going to read in the data from the database, and I'm going to store into the some string variables here. And now out dot println, or otherwise I'm going to have the h1 here, right? So in the h1 I'm going to have the eid, right, employee id I'm going to have from the database, from the JSP query out dot println of, or otherwise I can directly have the is equal to eig and percentile empty. Sorry, I need to have this one inside my here itself. Right, next h1, again one more h1 I'm taking for having the e name, right, employee name, right, and here I'm going to have the percentile is equal to e name, right, and a percentile less than symbol, and I'm going to have the address also, right. So for that purpose, employee address, and I'm going to have here ADDR, and now what I'm going to do is else I'm going to have the again I'm going to close the JSP script to have my h1. And what is that h1? I'm going to have the h1 of what I'm going to do, login invalid ID, right, and I'm going to close the JSP script here. Alright, so like this I can have my EID value, and I can display the employee ID from the employee details from the database. Let me check whether it is working or not. So for that purpose, click on a run button. Okay, JSP JDBC will be starting. Okay, so now I am going to enter my user ID, employee ID as 1 and say login, and it is going to display employee ID is 1, employee name is Techno Trendz, and employee address is Warangal, and I'm going to enter. I want to know the details of the employee ID 2, and it is going to display EID 2, and employee name is YouTube, and employee address is Hyderabad, and I am going to check whether there is data with the employee ID 3, and it is going to display me invalid ID. So like this I can connect with the database using JSP with the help of the JDBC drivers, and the JDBC driver will be added through the properties of our web application as the library to my application, right. Like, thank you very much for seeing my application, and thank you. Like, don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe to my channel Techno Trendz. Thank you very much, guys. Signing off, your Techno Trendz.